Today, we're going to a place that's often kept in the shadows, a place of unimaginable pain and despair. We're talking about suicide among fathers. There are no neat statistics to pull from a global database, no official count of how many fathers take their own lives each year because of the agony of family court battles or the soul-crushing despair of parental alienation. But the data we do have paints a terrifying picture, a silent epidemic with a human face. Today, we're not just going to talk about the numbers. We're going to share a deeply personal and heartbreaking story, the story of a father named Stephen, whose fight against the system, against false allegations and parental alienation, tragically came to an end. It's a story that puts a name and a face to the horror, and it's one we need to hear. This is about the lethal pressures of a system that can and does break good people. When we talk about the horrors of family court, we often focus on the financial ruin, the emotional toll, the years of litigation. But there's a final, irreversible horror that rarely makes the headlines in a way that truly connects the dots. And that's the reality of suicide. Now, let me be clear up front. There is no single global database that meticulously tracks how many fathers take their own lives specifically because of family court battles or the agony of parental alienation. The data simply isn't collected in that granular way. Suicide is complex, often attributed to multiple factors, but to deny the connection or to dismiss the profound impact of these experiences would be a profound disservice to the men and the families who suffer. What we do have, however, is a mountain of evidence from multiple countries, from countless studies, from the heartbreaking testimonies of organizations dedicated to supporting fathers that paints an undeniably grim picture. Let's start with the hard numbers we do have. Research consistently shows that separated and divorced men face a significantly higher risk of suicide compared to married men. And when I say significantly, I mean significantly. Some studies suggest this risk can be anywhere from 2 to 3 times higher, and in some age groups even as much as 6 to 15 times higher. This isn't just a slight increase, it's a catastrophic spike in vulnerability. Experts and those on the front lines point to several critical factors that converge within the family court system. Firstly, the breakdown of a relationship itself. This is a major life stressor for anyone, but for many men, the loss of their primary relationship is compounded by the terrifying prospect of losing their children. This leads us directly to the next critical factor: parental alienation. Imagine waking up one day and the children you love more than life itself suddenly begin to reject you. Their affection turns to coldness, their calls go unanswered, their visits are resisted, and you know deep in your gut it's not coming from them, it's being influenced, manipulated. This isn't just heartbreaking, it's soul-destroying. Studies have found a direct and strong association between parental alienation and elevated levels of suicidal ideation and actual suicide among targeted fathers. When a father is systematically erased from his children's lives, when his attempts to connect are blocked, when his very existence is vilified, it creates an unbearable sense of helplessness, powerlessness, and despair. These are known, potent risk factors for suicide. The feeling that every single thing you've worked for, everything you love, is being systematically stripped away, often with the perceived sanction of the court system, can push anyone to the absolute brink. And that brings us to the family court system itself. Rather than being a place of resolution and protection, for many fathers it becomes another source of immense, debilitating stress. It's the constant legal battles, the exorbitant costs, the perceived bias, the feeling of not being heard, of being treated as disposable. Evidence presented to government committees in countries like Australia and the UK has specifically linked family court proceedings and relationship breakdowns to suicidal thoughts and, tragically, to suicide deaths. Some reports estimate that as many as 70% of male suicides in Australia could be linked to relationship breakdowns, And in the UK, about 20% of suicides by middle-aged men are believed to be related to family breakdown. These aren't just statistics, these are fathers. These are men who, by all accounts, loved their children. Men who, for whatever reason, found themselves caught in a system that they felt offered no escape, no justice, and no hope of reconnecting with their kids. Now let's compare this to the normal population. Globally, men already have a significantly higher suicide rate than women. This is a well-established fact, with men accounting for 75–80% of all suicide deaths in many countries. But when you look at fathers immersed in the family court system, especially those experiencing parental alienation, the suicide risk isn't just higher. It's an order of magnitude greater than for the general male population. So while I can't give you a precise global number for fathers who commit suicide directly because of family court, what I can tell you is that this is a population at extreme heightened risk. It's an unseen epidemic quietly devastating families and communities around the world, and it's a horror story that unfolds every single day. We have a mountain of evidence from multiple countries, from countless studies, from the heartbreaking testimonies of organizations dedicated to supporting fathers, that paints an undeniably grim picture. And sometimes the picture is given a name. This week, we learned a name: Stephen. Stephen was 43 years old. He was a good man, by all accounts, who hadn't seen his children in over a year. He was fighting a battle that far too many parents know, a battle against false allegations. He was accused of being abusive to his children and their mother. But here's the horrifying part. These claims were repeatedly dismissed. Social services, Cafcass, the police, and every judge who heard the case found no evidence against him. In fact, the judges repeatedly found that the mother was lying, using these false accusations as a deliberate tactic to alienate Stephen from his children. You would think with that kind of finding the court would act, but they didn't. They refused to punish the mother, instead choosing to stick with the status quo, a legal term that in this case meant keeping a loving father away from his children. They said punishing the mother was not in the child's best interest. But at the same time, they were, in effect, driving a desperate man to suicide and leaving a child to live with an abuser. Stephen had spent over $30,000 in legal fees, almost bankrupting himself. On Friday, he was in court again, trying to enforce an order that would allow him to see his kids. But once again, the court refused to punish the mother for her non-compliance. It was a final roll of the dice for him. Feeling like his life was over without his children, Stephen took his own life. Stephen's story is the perfect example of how the system fails. It shows how the court's inaction, their refusal to enforce their own orders, and their preference for maintaining a broken status quo can have fatal consequences. It's a system that, while claiming to act in the best interest of the child, can instead drive a good parent to the absolute limit of human endurance. Stephen was not a statistic, he was a person, and his tragic end is why we need urgent reform of the family court system. This abuse cannot continue. Rest in peace, Stephen. This isn't just about winning a court case, it's about saving lives. If you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out. There are resources available, and you are not alone.